Today in the program, The Way of a Creative Person. She wrote her own verses while her classmates could hardly learn someone else's poems by heart. Her first publication was when the world was in an economic crisis, and she was the first Kazakh poetess who was put on par with the masters of poetry. A reverent attitude to the poets exists in all cultures and traditions. From ancient Greece, poets were called intermediaries between gods and men, to extremely militarized, but at the same time to admire the spiritual impulses set out in rows of haiku in medieval Japan. Poets were necessary for states, and their teachers thought of the people, and very often elevated to the rank of sages. One of the most remarkable poets of our time, whose work tells not only the events in the course of life and inspires readers and awakens their consciousness, is our compatriot Kalima Murzabaeva. Since childhood, I dreamed about something. I always asked myself, everyone comes into the world to leave some trace, and I always wanted to leave mine. Well, I think that my life is over and no one will know. I think it is strange, and why did I come into this world? I do not know what you want to call it, intuition or what, but since childhood I have had some goals. I have always wanted to write a book. I've always wanted that. I think I'll write a book, and it has always been unconscious to me, the desire to write a book. I think that I will not be in the world, and even some greenhouse or shop will not be called in my honor. Kalima reads a lot. This is not surprising because her mother worked in the library and she had no more diligent readers than our heroine, and Kalima had access to the entire world of classical literature. I remember in the 4th or 3rd grade, I read 12 volumes of Dumas within the summer holidays. I read them when the moon was shining, and my grandmother and my mother picked up the book. You will wear glasses then. I read always under the moonlight when they fell asleep. My dad laughed. It would be enough for my lifetime. Over the summer, 12 volumes were read. Broad-minded and erudition of the future poet contributed to the atmosphere that reigned in the family. Her father was the director of the farm, and in addition to the organization of work, actively developed the culture of his native village.
Много в этой семье любви, настолько было уважения друг к другу, детям, и поэтому дети выросли свободными.
There is a lot of love in this family, much respect for each other and to the children. And the children have grown free-minded, showed their talent and knowledge in all areas. The father of Kalima, he played the harmonica, could sing, was very cheerful, and now he would take up any event. Any wedding would be held without preparation, because he was a developed man, so he could speak freely and dance and sing. As they say, all of it depends on education, how children would grow up. If a child grows up in a free family full of love, he will grow up to be such a good person.
Если ребенок растет в свободной семье, вот такой в любви, то из него вырастают вот такие хорошие личности.
Много мне дал в духовном плане.
He gave me a lot spiritually and was an example for me. He was very interesting. He played the harmonica well and dressed. He was such a dandy. Handsome. That's why the good taste I have, I got it from my dad.
Вот у меня откуда вкус-то от папы.
И дедушка, и бабушка в какой-то степени были творческие.
And grandparents were creative people to some extent, especially my grandfather. If to say in Kazakh, he was a kin, singer, folk singer, a very talented man. If he would not be talented, the neighbors wouldn't come running to his songs. He sang very nicely, collected a pretty large audience of neighbors.
Довольно-таки большую аудиторию соседей.
It is not surprising that Kalima's first line was written very early. It was an age when many children find it difficult to learn other people's poems, far from writing their own.
Во 2 классе где-то сознательно я уже помню.
In the 2nd grade, I remember consciously. It was summer. I wrote something about nature. I wrote about the sun and about the leaves. It was about 2 to 3 lines. It was like there's a flying leaf, death, something just 2 to 3 lines. I wrote them, and I remember how my girlfriend came just at that time and asked, "What are you doing?" And me, "I'm writing." She looked at me in a very strange way.
Пишу, она так на меня странно посмотрела.
The path of the future poet was already predetermined by the heavens. Nothing about the other entities except philology. Her thirst for literature was simply irresistible for a language. She went to the Central University in Moscow.
У меня были такие замечательные учителя, которые с сияющими глазами, без всяких книг.
I had such wonderful teachers that with shining eyes, without any books, walked between rows and so enthusiastically talked about everything. Actually, they were super teachers, and that time was super. I was friends with teachers. They never scolded me for skipping lessons because they said, Kalima skips, she comes and passes all exams. I graduated 3 courses with honors. Then, knowing that I am forgetting my language, I thought about coming back to my homeland, Kazakhstan, to learn my language and be useful at home. Anyway, I wanted to be useful to society.
Буду полезной здесь, у себя на родине. Мне, во всяком случае, мне хочется быть полезной обществу.
A major shift in the work of Kalima Murzabaeva occurred on the turn of the millennium. In those difficult years when the world is going through a major economic crisis, there was a lot of social upheaval. That's when she decided she should not create for herself, but for others. It was time for publication.
97-й год, конечно, когда происходили такие события вообще на планете Земля. Это были наводнения, это были...
1997 was full of events on the planet Earth. There was a flood, it was the collapse of the aircraft. This year, Mother Teresa has gone to another world as well as Diana. And somehow, watching TV, I ask myself, who will carry morality in the world? Where are these examples? Where are these heroes? Well, spontaneously, or I got it unconsciously, it was like in movies when you find yourself in some other portal, receive a lot of oxygen and air, and I do not know. I was in some other dimension.
Поступает очень много кислорода, много всего, воздуха, и не знаю, я в другом каком-то измерении оказываюсь.
And then within 1 month I wrote verses. There were 200 to 300 per month. And then, when I read other works, they write stories over the period of 6 months. To write a poem takes some time, and I would do it quickly as it turns out. I can write at dawn and bring it, and it will be quickly published. Every night for a month, everyday verses came down like a stream, straight, vertical. They came and came. My husband was not surprised because he used to see papers and pens around me. I was just trembling. I had none of them. I couldn't sleep if I didn't write.
Потому что без этого, я прям дрожала, все это брала и писала. Я не могла уснуть, потому что если бы я не написала, я бы не уснула.
Her poems immediately found their readers. They were published in many popular magazines. And soon people had the chance to appreciate the first of her collection entitled Kalima Grad, kind of allegorical city of love, woven of poetry and sentimental poetry of space. Her work was highly appreciated by literature experts. When I brought my poems, Nurlan Mirkasimovich read and said, "Yes, this is serious." Then there was a meeting. I came to the meeting. He introduced me to everyone and said, "This is our Kazakhstani Akhmatova Svetaeva. Take her poems and translate them into the Kazakh language." And I remember his words. Then it is a huge responsibility to compare it with such names. I always feel the responsibility. Kalima Murzabaeva says that Aruach, ancestral spirits, help her work. In her poetry and prose, she presents to the reader a unique feeling of harmony surrounding life, understanding the basics of value creation, man's relationship with the world, the complex life of the mind and soul, and eternal values such as faith, love, and happiness.
У меня смешение стилей, жанры разные там.
I have a mixture of styles and genres. They are different and real, illusionary and mystical in today's. I'm talking about what matters to each person. Surely every poet writes about love. The poet must always be in a state of falling in love. Love, life, all I care about is what I am worried about. My country, patriotic feelings, about what lies ahead, even the future. I looked into the mysteries of the universe, about who we are, what we are, and where we are going. I was always worried about these questions since childhood. I asked myself, and the answers I found in the books by Victor Hugo, Gide, Maupassant, and Pushkin and Abai, and Akhmatova, who was very, very close to me. More recently, the Poetess has released 2 new collections of poems and prose, united under one name, Semja, and their unusual creative presentation was a notable cultural event for the country. Guest stars recited poems by Kalima, and the highlight of the program was the painting, writing directly on the presentation, inspired by the sounded poetry.
Мы с Сериком Буксиковым сделали такой перформанс. Он рисовал, вдохновленный моей книгой, я ему дала свою книгу почитать, И он рисовал это полотно.
Together with Jibek I made such a performance. His paintings were inspired by my book. I gave him a book to read and he painted this canvas in the process of it happening. Venera, Nigmatulina, Jean by Janbaev. Many of our stars, the elite, came to me and he was drawing. I was reading poetry. People were asking questions, and then a piece of our creativity, freedom of thought. We decided to divide and give everything to all the guests who were there. Design was also developed by me. It was all my idea to make the block with 2 books, and we had 2 options of color gray and purple. Purple is so mysterious, but we stopped on the gray. The design itself should be colorful with white sheets. They say maybe leaves would be yellow. I say no, only white, the most beautiful and highest quality color. I want to present people such a beautiful book. This is a limited gift block, and then Serek Buksikov painted the cover. They will be in 3 versions, this gift block with his covers. There's a beautiful crystal in the drawn wings of a swan. I have many works with swans. It is also very symbolic, and the crystal symbols cleanliness.
Крылья лебедя. У меня же лебедях очень много. Это тоже символично очень. И кристаллы. Кристалл — это чистота.
The poet cannot create without inspiration. That is why poetic art is a kind of gift. For Kalima Murzabaeva, the main source of inspiration is the versatile creative family. The brothers are fond of music and history. The eldest son, Amir, writes poetry and is going to become a director. The middle son, Damir, has a different rational thinking. Their daughter shares Kalima's hobby. My daughter, I say her, will probably be a designer. When I go somewhere, I buy something, I ask my daughter. Saleswomen look at us with interest. I had her advice because her taste is very good from 3 to 4 years old. She chooses the things by herself. We have the same taste. Well, she is so romantic in nature, so thin. She also has a vulnerable heart. Being a woman of fine feelings, Kalima Murzabaeva has been actively involved in social projects, carrying out activities in orphanages, schools, and collaborating with charitable funds.
Я пишу тексты для благотворительных фондов, они просят иногда.
I write the lyrics for charities. Sometimes they ask me to do it. Why not? For the salvation of children. I give my books to the orphanages and kindergartens and, of course, in the schools. The National Library, they are already there. Then performances in research institutes, universities, meeting with That meeting will take place soon. Literally Friday, I gathered with fans on Instagram. I have a lot of them. I was so glad that the young people, they're interested, they want to see and communicate. I have books and contests there. I invited them and all are happy to come and wait for this meeting. I think these meetings will be permanent.
Придут и ждут этой встречи. И я думаю, эти встречи будут постоянно.
The Kazakh poetess writes on the verge of 2 centuries and 2 worlds. Behind this hill hides a rather mundane but necessary things to everyone. Love, loyalty, kindness, salvation. Simple things are being talked about a lot and often, but they do not become less valuable and stirs the soul. And the way Kalima Murzabaeva writes gives these topics a special, unique sound. People ask, well, what is your mission in the near future? I say, well, get people to read the book, rustle the pages, not sitting behind the monitor and do not spoil their vision. And the entrance into the world, it is also virtual, presented themselves there, and out into the world, carrying light and goodness in the world in which I go with it, and with faith and love, that they went out into the world with this faith and this love, and will never do bad things, and work only for the good.